So, Pete, can you tell me like how your filmmaking journey started? What inspired you to become a filmmaker?
Oh, I turned 40 last year, so it's quite a long journey. Um, I grew up at the countryside in Switzerland. You don't study there. You do an apprenticeship. You work with metal or wood or something like this. So there was no thought about making arts or something. And later on, I applied for a TV station and worked there as a journalist. And this is what raised my thought about telling stories. So that was a first initial thought. And then I moved to Zurich and applied for the University of Arts in Film there. And happily, they took me. And that's why I started to make film. But film is very expensive. So I initially went to the theaters and started to do theater because it's way cheaper, no technique, just working with actors and actresses. And so I do have two passions now. I work in theater and I work in film.
So, your documentary film, the Driven One, premiered at Zurich Film Festival. So, how did the idea for this documentary originated?
I used to work as a journalist in for a for a newspaper in economics, and I interviewed quite a lot of CEOs, and I didn't really understand what they telling me. First, I didn't really understand their language, the words they used, and secondly, also when the interview was finished and I walked out, I always thought they didn't really answer my questions. So I wanted to know more about this world, which is so important and so powerful in our global system. Because I would say um, the the global companies, they are more important and they do have more power than politics sometimes. That's why I wanted to know who are these people, what are their goals, and what are their ideals, and where do they come from.
So, I want to talk about like the funding part of the film. Like, was it self-funded or like you got producers?
Do you talk about the driven ones or
The Driven ones.
the new ones,
The
the
Driven
driven
ones.
ones? The Driven Ones is funded with public money. It's funded with public money from Switzerland and Germany, like cultural money, cultural funds. And this is very important to me because with this cultural money, we are independent. So we don't rely to a company or the university in St. Gallen. We are very independent. And that's why I could do a film which can be critical.
So, how long it take to like complete the documentary, and how big was the group?
Um, we filmed the documentary about 7 years. It's a long-term project because I wanted to know, I wanted to dig in deep, and I that is not made with 3 4 months. So I really wanted to get to know these people, and the amount of time is very important because there you see the changes from the ideals they had with then when the reality check hits in. That was very important. The group was mostly we were three people. There is my producer Sarah, and then there is my camera man Stefan, and I did the sound. I recorded the sound. We were quite a small group. It was not totally financed, so we had to work in a very small team.
So, like while making the film, what was the biggest challenge that you faced, and how did you overcome that?
Um, to the biggest challenge with the driven ones was to always get in touch and stay in touch with the economic students because they had their careers, so they're getting more and more important. They had less and less times. They started to fly business, and I flew economy, and this was um, quite a thing. First, we started that we say we talk every month at I would say 6 o'clock in the evening, and afterwards it's getting 2 a.m. in the morning because they were so busy. That was something very critical, and the rest, when we released the film, the university, the economic university in St. Gallen, they were not so pleased about it because it's a critical film. There we faced quite a lot of critics, which is totally fine, but we had quite to deal with it.
Okay, great. So let's talk about your latest film, Bagger Drama. So it has a unique premise intertwining the family story with the presence of excavators. So what was the inspiration behind this choice?
The excavator drama, it's my most personal film so far because it's partly it's my story as well. My sister died 20 years ago, and that's where my family faced like a point of maybe no return or a point zero where you have to think about yourself. How do I get along with grief? How will I? What's the family still? How is the family still working? And these were the questions who interested me. Also, the in Switzerland where I grew up, it's not so normal to talk about in families of it's. Sorry, I start again. In Switzerland, where I grew up, it's not so common to talk about feeling, sex, or love in between a family. So there is a lack of communication. And when a tragic happens or a death like this, the family is split apart. And my film is a story about the family who didn't really learn to talk.
So I want to talk about the writing process. As you said, like it's a very personal film. So have you also have you gone to script labs as well, and does it really shape your script?
So this is my first feature, and yes, I did some writing programs as well. I went with this fiction, with this story, to Munich, Germany, and did the Drehbuchwerkstatt München, which is a 1 year program, which helped me quite a lot. It's a lot of mentoring, a lot of inputs. I really loved it. And then I went to Warsaw with a European program. It's called Ekran Plus, which helped me to shoot one or film one or two scenes just to see what would be the mood, what would be the look. And this helped very much to develop the whole picture.
So like for this film, like how the funding part worked? Like you get producer because it's a feature film.
Um, the funding of the excavator drama was very difficult because it's very privileged in Switzerland, but also it's never too much money, and it was quite a big movie for me or for us, so we could raise not enough in the end, and it was all cultural money from the canton of Zurich, the canton of Bern, and from the state as well a little bit, and from a TV station, but it was not enough. So we had to make cuts and decisions, and one big decision was that we just shoot with available lights. So there is no lamp extra added, no extra light. It's all available light.
So it has traveled like various festivals, and you have won also a lot of awards. So what has been the audience reaction like all over the world?
That's a very interesting question because I thought it's a very Swiss story, very, very local, very personal. And then we were invited from the big festival San Sebastian in Spain, which was a huge privilege. And we went there, and I realized with the audience, we saw the film with the audience. It was the world premiere, and there was scene applause. And I was so touched, and I realized it's a very global story. And also because you say Swiss people are a little bit reserved, maybe a little bit cold from outside, and Spanish people are more like heartwarming, emotional, but it worked in both areas, which was very touching to me.
So, like, are there any your like favorite films and filmmakers that have influenced you a lot? Like, it's a list. You can give me a list.
I'm quite influenced by the European cinema. I'm very into European cinema. One of my one I always mention is Christian Petzold. It's a German filmmaker who was at the Berlinale quite a lot. I do love his films because they are so decent. You don't. It's like an iceberg, but you just see the part on the top, and you don't. You just realize in your head how big the iceberg underneath has to be. And then there are quite a lot of theater people I'm inspired. I find my inspiration also in fine arts, or when I walk my dog or whatever. And it's hard to tell more names actually, because I had to think about it a little bit more. Sorry.
So, Pete, my last question is like, there are a lot of aspiring filmmakers. So, what advice would you give to them if they want to become a filmmaker?
My advice to young filmmakers, I would say don't go after something, do your own stuff. And I would say go and do theater. It's way more cheap. It's you can really work with the actors and actresses, and there I learned my skills.